I have had the privilege and the honor to sit down with my dear friend Michael Sanini. It's been a lifelong dream of mine. No, I'm joking because I haven't had this dream so long, but it's been a recent dream of mine. To sit down with a male and talk about attachment theory and generational trauma because I know that this isn't exactly the topic that is front and center for men. So when I get a chance to do that, I am incredibly grateful. This conversation between Michael and I turned into a three-piece episode. So this is going to be the second part of that. Last week we talked about Michael's background, and in this part we are going to look into some of the results, some of the questions that came when he took the quiz online, the attachment project quiz that anyone can take. No promo here. I don't really know about him that well. All I know is that it was a great quiz and it covered a lot of good ground, and we're going to be talking about that in this episode. So stay tuned and welcome to Becoming Secure with Mike's Mindset. I do want to go into the test that you took because we looked at some of these questions this morning. And they kind of broke it into categories. They broke it into relationship with mother, relationship with father, and relationships with the relationships you've had, right? And more general.
Yeah, there's your mother caregiver, and your father provider, right, caregiver, your intimate relationships, and then relationships in general, right?
Yeah.
And it's more like, friends, work relationships, that type of thing, that category.
Right.
Yeah, and the questions range from, like, how open are you to talking to these people, right? Do you feel they're going to judge you when you talk to them? How much do you think these people care about you as much as you care about them? Are you, when you have problems, are they the type of person you're willing to go to help you with those problems? Do you fear abandonment from these people, right? It was always generally in those type of categories of questions. And then you did that for each section for mother, father, intimate relationships, and, general relationships.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how you answered those questions related to your mom?
Yeah, with my mother, my mother was bipolar, right? As a kid when I was educated on it, they called it manic depressive bipolar, where someone would either, be an extremely manic state, right, or in a depressive state. And those states could last for certain amounts of time. With my mother being bipolar, I always felt like she was two people. She was the extremely nice mother, but there was always a switch there where she could become a nightmare of a mother. And so with that, a lot of my answers were on the strongly disagree or strongly agree side of that, right? Because you don't want to, you're not willing to open up to a person, right? Who you don't know when that switch is going to flip and how they're going to react on anything.
Yeah.
And then that leads you, into I can't go to them to solve problems, right? And I don't like opening up and talking to them, right? And this isn't a person I feel I can rely on, and because things could switch, and she could beat you or throw you out of the house, right? Or randomly try to find you when you're out of the house and bring you back. You do have that fear of abandonment because literally you're told to leave and not come back at 10 years old. So, and it just creates that situation where all my answers were on the extreme with my mother because it was a roller coaster of an experience.
You would tell me that it was a landmine. You were essentially walking on this landmine when you were around your mother because you never knew when the flip would switch, right? And this was only living with your mom, I assume, because you said your parents were divorced and then you were living with your father in Modesto.
My parents lived, a 30-minute drive from each other. And so up until five years old, I lived with my mom full time in Stockton, and I would visit my dad on the weekends. But then when I was 5, I moved with my dad, and I lived in Modesto, and I would be with him Monday through Friday. And then on Friday, he'd drop me off in Stockton. I'd spend the weekends with my mom. And the way I went to school was we call it a track system, right? So instead of going to school for 9 months and then you have 3 months off, like a traditional school system, you'd go to school for 3 months and you'd have 1 month off, and then 3 months and 1 month off.
Okay.
So I would go to school in Modesto for 3 months, and Monday through Friday I'm with my dad. And then on the weekends I'd be in Stockton. But for that 1 month I have off, I would just be in Stockton.
Okay.
The entire month. But my mother worked 2 jobs, and my dad worked a lot, and he worked in the Bay Area, so he commuted a couple hours away each way. So 4 hours of driving a day. He was rarely home. So we were latchkey kids. So
what does that mean?
It's an American term. It means like you don't have a babysitter. When you get home and off school, you have your own key, and you let yourself into your house, and then you lock it, and then you stay in the house.
So how early?
At 6 years old, in the first grade, where I got a bike, and I started riding myself to school and taking myself home. And the only people that would be home would be my older brothers. While I didn't live with my mom through, from the age of 5, on permanently, I was with her a lot. Every 3 months, I spent a month living with her, right? And every weekend I was with her.
Yeah.
So I did live with her a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I mostly lived with my dad from those years on.
Tell me about your relationship with your dad.
My dad was super cool. He was like literally super funny, super cool, suave guy. Everybody liked him, a lot of friends. Not highly educated, but really good businessman. Eventually, later in his life, started making, acceptable money being from where from in Stockton and stuff. Was able to move us to the Bay Area and live well. But I should have probably prefaced, both my parents are alcoholics as well, extreme alcoholics.
Right, yeah.
My dad was the type of guy to wake up in the morning and make a fruit smoothie and put a little liquor in it to cure the hangover, and then go to work, and he's having a drink at lunch, and then when he gets off of work, he's drinking until he falls asleep. And with him working so much and him being a partier, right, a ladies' man, always out at the bar and stuff, he just wasn't around that much. So when he was around, he was super cool, super smart guy, taught me to read, taught me the value of reading and the importance of it, and how to actually take what you read and put it into practice. But beyond that, he was a great provider as well. But again, beyond those things, he was just really ass doing his own thing.
What do you know about your parents' backgrounds at all?
My mother was Mexican. Her mother, my grandmother, Mercedes, was from Mexico, an illegal immigrant.
Legal or illegal?
Illegal.
Illegal.
Yeah. So her mother was my grandmother's single mother. No education, didn't speak any English. Worked as a nanny and a housekeeper when she could. Extremely poor. My mother was one of 11, the youngest of 11. So within all of that, a ton of kids, right? So a very old-fashioned immigrant story. She was born in Tulare, California, which is the agricultural area in central Southern California. Then moved up to Stockton, when she was a little kid, and grew up in Stockton. Never graduated high school. Started working in factories and stuff like that when she was young, out of high school. Then my dad helped her get a job as a janitor, and she was a janitor and a housekeeper for most of her life, working 2 jobs, until she got married again later in life, and then sadly died when she was younger. She technically had a stroke and fell and hit her head, and then was unable to be resuscitated.
How many years ago was that?
Died the day after Christmas, 2019.
Yeah.
She had a tough life. Came up poor, lived in a rough city her whole life. But later in her life, she found a good marriage, and towards the end of her life, lived a comfortable life. But always struggled mentally with mental disease, right? Very Christian woman, was made her very conservative, right? So she wasn't into doctors too much. When she was prescribed any medicine or anything like that, wouldn't want to take the help, drinking as well. You can't take medicine and drink alcohol, right? So she chose to drink over taking medicine and getting therapy or anything like that to try and get better.
Yeah.
Again, a very up and down light switch woman, and created a very land field, right? Like you mentioned earlier, one of my metaphors is like landmines everywhere. As a kid, you never know when you're going to step on it, and that lasts, for when you're going to even remember all the way through her whole life.
Yeah, because you were also speaking to, as a kid, you didn't know when to touch it, but the older you get, you knew that you kind of knew how to navigate the terrain a little bit because you were like understanding of what triggered it.
Yeah, exactly. Over time, you would learn to adapt to anything, right? So any child of abuse, until you learns to adapt, right? You learn to, if they keep beating me, I got to be tough, right? Or if they're mentally abusive, I learn to get away, learn to escape. So most kids run away.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kids will develop how to deal with any type of abusive or ill-forming parent, And so for me, over time, you just learn how to deal with it, one. And then two, you learn how to adapt to it, and you learn what triggers it, right? So you can learn to avoid those landmines. Or later in life, when you just don't want to deal with it, I would learn to step on a landmine and trigger her so she could blow up and kick me out, and so that I could be free and go do what I wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
With my friends and stuff, and with people where it's not a stressful environment, where I'm dealing with anger and someone else's emotions just because you don't know how to deal with your shit and you're just living your life.
It's so interesting. I mean, there's certainly factors here that kind of triggers my mind. Granted, just like the detail that your mother had 10 siblings. She was the youngest out of 11. I mean, one of the things that I've learned about it in attachment theory is that the first few years of your life, the only thing you most fundamentally need to develop a healthy brain is the physical touch from your mother and your father, the people around you. And you really need them to, you really need to be on your mother's chest kind of thing. It's so much more important for you to get to develop this healthy connection to your parents. And when you have that many siblings, it's probably a lot of that love gets lost, a lot of that connection that you needed.
One could just be.
Exactly. And also not to mention the fact that it was a completely different time. So that this might have been around a time where the father figure wasn't really present at all, because he might have been the provider fully, especially in Mexican culture.
Yeah, my mother's father, my grandfather, was never.
So it's a lot that got lost there too. So this is kind of a story of generational trauma, which is
for sure. I learned too in my education on abuse. Most people don't mean to be the way they are, right? All they can do is what they were taught and what they know. I learned a lot from my friends in the South. It's very common to get told, go get a switch, and you got to go out to a tree and pick a branch, and then your grandpa beats you with a stick. And these willow branches are tight. They leave these marks and they can cut you. It's a very common Southern thing, right? And you're horrified hearing about this. But if you ask anyone born before 1990 in the South and back hundreds of years, this was just done. Everybody knows, go get a switch and you go get with a branch real quick because you're bad. And it's this is, in other cultures, this is torture. In Scandinavia, it's democratic social.
I hope people can see my face right now.
It's this is just what happens, and that's just common. It wasn't until modern times that people hey, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
You don't need to do this.
Right, because it definitely develops an unhealthy attachment.
And back to the crux of it, right? Generational trauma or whatever it may be. I just see people can only do what they know, and we're taught. If you know great things and are taught great and good and positive things, then you're probably gonna be able to teach and do.
So let's test you on this. Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and I fully agree with you. I think this is great. So Mike, with that logic, why wouldn't you be a great parent?
I know I could be a great parent.
But what is your fear?
I mean, everybody has fears. I fear I would abuse the kid the way I did. I fear I would fly off the handle the way my mother. My dad whooped me as a kid, and again there was some instances where he severely beat me, like the one we talked about.
Yeah.
In this story, when he caught me doing some stuff. I've been whooped by him a few times, but he generally didn't beat me. He just disciplined me physically, as his Italian father did to him, right?
Right.
So people only do what they know, right? But like my mother, what she did to me wasn't even that extreme compared to what some of my siblings got. Like my little sister, never. I got to go live with my dad. She did not. She had to stay with my dad her whole life, right? My oldest brother, he tried to come live with us, right? But my mom needed him to help take care of my little sister, to help be. So he, being the oldest, had to go back to Stockton and live, in Stockton and not get to be with us in a suburb life in Modesto. So he had to be in city life in Stockton. So like I didn't get it as bad as some of my other siblings, right? But I still got it in certain ways to the point where I don't ever want to do that to someone. And back to people only do, can do what they know. A lot of people just revert to their natural upbringing and what they're taught. If I were to ever even do 1% of what happened to me, to my child, I would feel terrible. I couldn't forgive myself. I couldn't live with myself to do some of that stuff to a kid. And sadly, I see my brother perpetuating some of the things that happened to us, onto my niece, and it's like, I see the impact on her. So like, while I know like 90% of what a child needs from their father, I would be, like a 90s sitcom,
Right.
like I could be, Carl from Family Matters, right? Or the dad from Full House. I could do that kind of stuff, no problem. But maybe there's that 10% of me that would rub off with the stuff that was done to me. And even if 1% of that rubbed off, I just won't take the risk. So while I know I could be a great father, I don't really want children because I don't want to perpetuate the cycle, right? And I can attempt to learn and grow out of it as much as I am, which is what I'm starting to do these last few years, and I'm going to continue to do, grow as a person, learn mental health, learn about that type of growth, to, heal, as you say, right? For me, it's just about growing and improving.
Right.
But within those fears are there, right? So I won't take that risk, personally. Maybe things change, right? If I meet the right person,
Exactly.
if I grow enough, right, and I read the right conditions to learn to deal and cope with these things in real time, as well as long-term stuff. But yeah, I know I could be great, but I also know I could be terrible, right? And so I don't want to take the risk. And also within that, back to relationships and stuff, I just really never met a person. I like certain people. I don't like people. I like persons, individuals. I generally don't like most people. So I just don't think I've ever found someone who I'm like, yes, that's someone who's of the quality to be the mother of my children. It's back to it, right? I don't want someone else's name to rub off on my kid either.
It seems that what you've kind of understood here is that which we've talked about in attachment theory, is that like you kind of attract where you are yourself, right? So it's like when you're on a specific frequency, you attract that frequency, and in many ways you kind of worry that you would attract someone with a similar background, and where the risk is greater of continuing this cycle of abuse, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the worry, right? Look, I think what you're getting is what I'm learning is that stuff's true, right? Like, I always thought Freud was a bit of a fraud, but that mother stuff, right? But back to it, you get older and then you see the type of women you are attracted to, and you're like, wow, like, yeah. The women that I've been attracted to have also had homes of abuse or similar things happen in their past, right? And it's like, back to it, I don't want someone else's stuff to, like, I don't want to perpetuate what I do on not only my child, but also on another partner, right?
Yeah.
And if they're just like myself, we're probably going to feed into that or make it okay.
With that knowledge, why do you think it's so important to heal?
Can a person change? Can you heal? Right? I don't know if I lose my leg, I'm not a lizard, my leg's not going to grow back, right? I can't heal my leg being gone or being raised without a leg. But what I can do is make my arms and my other leg and my back and my mind, right? And all these other things strong enough where I can learn to walk without a leg. And I can not only learn to walk without a leg, I can do everything you who has a leg can do, right? So I don't know if healing for me is the right word.
Sounds like you answered the
I
question.
think it's more like growth, right, and improvement. Right. And so like I don't know if I don't think that, and I don't want to heal maybe the things my mom, because that's my relationship with my mom. If I heal these things, and it can tarnish the positives, right? Maybe the more I lean into these, maybe it changes things. There's some fear of that. But also, I just want to be able to grow to, no matter whether what happens to me or what is, right, or what was, I should say, I can be a better what is and what will be.
You bring up a really important point there about the fact that, like, well, if you cut your leg off, like, it's never going to grow back out. I think that's the good thing about mental health, is that, well, the only thing that can change and improve mental health is the narrative, right? The story you tell yourself. That is, like I said earlier, what you are in control of. You are in control of the narrative that you tell yourself. You have a narrative that you're telling yourself right now, and your belief and your reality is based off of that narrative that you currently have. And it's automated and it's habitual, meaning that you're not even aware that it's a narrative that you currently are telling yourself. But this is where you actually do have the control to switch that up and to change that. Because another thing is that you also have a significant amount of knowledge. You know a lot of things, Mike. You're incredibly smart. And what you also have just touched upon is the fact that it's a generational trauma, meaning that you're empathetic enough to recognize that your mother also came from a place of abuse. It looked maybe differently. It had its own storyline, but your mom repeated what she knew. Like you said, we're all a result of what we've been exposed to. You've heard me say the same thing before. And this is true. So you also have the level of empathy for your mother to recognize that, like, she worked with what she knew. She worked with what she got. But you know a lot more, meaning that this is already putting you in a different position, because you actually have now a set of tools that your mother didn't. You know better, you know differently. This is probably going to end with you, actually, because of where you are in your development. And that is the narrative that you have the power to tell yourself, that it ends with you. It can end with you. That's what you are in control of. And you're also strong enough and well-educated enough to recognize when you need to remove yourself from a situation because you're triggered. Because yes, you will be triggered, and you will be presented with an opportunity to beat your child, probably, because they're going to annoy the shit out of you, because that's what kids do. But that's when you're in that moment are going to do the right thing, because you're prepared. You know that it's coming, But I digress, though. Let me kind of like weave it back in. Being in control of the narrative you tell yourself with your relationship with your mother too, is the fact that, like, all the good things are not going to disappear just because you are recognizing where your troubles are coming from. But you also recognize why it became this way. You can forgive your mothers and still recognize all of the beautiful things. You can also you can remember every single beautiful memory that you ever had with both your parents and your family as a whole when you still had your parents alive. That's not gonna be gone just because you recognize that you had, in many ways, an unfair upbringing compared to a lot of people.
I agree with that, and again, like back to it, my mother was bipolar. She was two people. Like half the time, she was also a great person, and like I was saying, like I hold on to those positive memories and the good times. It made me some part of back to the compartmentalization part of the stuff that makes it easier to get by is pushing the other stuff down and memorizing and prioritizing the positive memories, right? I just always feel like through mental health work, right, you don't talk about the good times.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go over again and again the great Christmases she provided, even though we were dirt poor, right? And the things she did or the things my family members did to help her give us great things, even though we had nothing, because while we might have been poor, I never wanted for anything. I always had food and clothes and stuff. I had friends who had it much worse than me. But with mental health, it's always we focus on the negatives to overcome them and get to positives, right? And I just feel like with the more I travel down the mental health route and the relationship with my mother, it does give me a more negative light on my upbringing, right? But also, again, we usually focus on the negatives to get to a positive, and I don't think as much about the good times. I focus on the negatives so we can learn from them and overcome, right? So like just with men, like that's what I think why a lot of men don't like doing that. So like, why can't any of this be about like
Yeah.
And when we went to the water park.
Yeah, because here's the thing. What it sounds like you're trying to avoid actually is a part of what is natural. It's a natural part of the process is being angry and like seeing the unjust and kind of being like, well, fuck, why did it have to be that way? You know, and like, why did that have to happen to me? And like, that led me to doing this and that. And you look at yourself and you might have like a certain level of shame. And there is a lot of negative emotions that do surface when we when we go in introspective and we
Put the work in.
Yeah, put the work in, essentially. It's like, and then you have a natural part of what happens is that there's a lot of anger that comes out of that. And there's going to be some times when you can maybe only see the negative for a hot second there. And I can tell you this because there was a time in my life when I was so angry with my dad that I was not sure that I was actually able to ever like move back to Norway or anything because I was so angry with like the energy that I was around. Like it really turned me into the worst version of myself because it triggered all of my wounds, you know, like every time I was around him, I didn't even know this consciously, but he was definitely, there was no doubt he was the one I was angry at. And I really did not have any hope at all that we were going to recover, mostly because my mom had also told me that change, like she didn't believe in change in adult people because they were so set in their ways. So she was like, kind of don't expect anything kind of thing, you know, where the only thing I knew that I could trust was God. So that's why I prayed. And when I like really thought that I could not like rekindle things with my dad because I was so angry and I had so many negative emotions, like I left it to God and I just started praying over it. And now our relationship is better than it's ever been. And it's continuing to become better too, because my dad is actually changing a lot. I see a lot of change in him and he's growing and becoming more introspective himself. And like this podcast is helping that happening even. And so I definitely see that it is possible to get to a place where you're not angry anymore. You get over it essentially, because at this point I've addressed it so many times and I've had these conversations. Like obviously you don't get to have the conversation with your mother and you don't get to like get to a place of peace with her, but that's not necessarily the goal here either. The goal is that you make peace with yourself and your upbringing. And I have done that. I have made peace with, I would say that I am making peace with. It's a process. I still can get triggered. I still can get angry. But I just know that I've seen a place where I'm not so angry anymore. I'm definitely able to see, I'm more able to see all of the positive things that he's doing now, because when he first started changing, I was still angry. So I was like, oh, it's too late. So I didn't actually see the work that he was putting in because I didn't want to see it, because I had just decided that I didn't.
Yeah, it could never come back.
Yeah, it couldn't come back. We couldn't survive this, you know? But eventually, like now I'm able to compliment him better. I'm able to show up for him better. I'm able to look at the good things and the positive things and let it have its weight, you know? And therefore, all of these positive things are resurfacing. So allow yourself to...
There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It is a light at the end of the tunnel, but I just want you to allow yourself, or strongly encourage you to just feel all the feelings. Feel the shame, feel the anger. Be angry at your mom, be angry at your dad, but you can still love them, and all of this is going to be true. And you can also be angry for as long as you need to. You're not going to be angry forever, I can promise you that. But you're going to have moments when you will be triggered, and that's going to happen. You can protect yourself 100%, lock yourself into your room, you know, and like not be exposed to triggered. Like you're going to be triggered, but you're going to just get better at handling it. But by not allowing yourself to go through all of the registers of emotions that your body can offer you, you're also denying your own growth, because you're not letting yourself feel everything that you are. Anger is a part of the what is it called, the rays of emotions, I don't know, rays of emotions. So it's like being sad, being angry, grieving, being happy, laughing, joy, all of it is part of it. So we need to allow space for the feelings that feel heavy. And like you explained in introductory, actually, is that it's a weak muscle for men. It's a weak muscle for many people, maybe. This can be true for women too, but maybe especially for men. It's a weak muscle, so you're uncomfortable using it. But that's what you have to remind yourself in those moments when you are feeling the when you're feeling the emotions that are heavy to bear, the ones that are uncomfortable, the ones that you don't like. You have to remind yourself, this is a weak muscle of mine, but I have to have this conversation, or I have to have this feeling, or I have to just sit with this, because now I'm building this muscle. Now this muscle is getting stronger.
ways.
Next time you are sitting in it, in the midst of that horrible feeling, you're winning. That's when you are winning. Because you're letting yourself be everything that you are, and you're allowing yourself to release to have its space so that it can kind of move on, you know?
Yeah, power positive thing, right?
Or just thinking that is getting you forward. Because I definitely have moments where I just like, I'm angry or sad or whatever, but I just kind of let myself have those feelings, you know? But if your narrative is that like, oh shit, this is this terrible, uncomfortable feeling that I'm feeling, can remind yourself in this moment that like, oh, I'm building this muscle that I'm not so strong at right now. And for every time you're exercising this, you get better at handling it every time. And why do we know that this is true? Because every time you lift weights, you get stronger. You know this because you lift weight yourself. You know that you up your strength every time you do it, you know? And this is true for every muscle in our body, even the brain and the mental one. This concludes part 2 of the 3-part episode with Michael Sinini. Stay tuned next week for the last episode in this sequence. And as always, stay curious and get to know yourself better. If you want to come share your version of how your attachment style manifested itself in your love life, please email me on magsmindset@gmail.com. I can't wait to hear from you.